a very special welcome to Doyle Sails tonight. Shane Guanaria and Chris Nicholson. They need no introduction, but I will get an introduction from them both. Shane, to you first. How have you arrived at where you are now? When did sailing take over your life?
I didn't really have a choice, Peter. It was something my old man did, and that meant from every Saturday from when I was a few weeks old, we were in the back of the wagon on our way down to what was Clontarf Sailing Club at the time in Middle Harbour. And I think he took me in my first race in a taser when I was 3 years old in a frostbite race. And from there, it sort of just became a way of life. And, you know, grew up through school where I grew up out at Northmead, which is out in the Hills District, about, you know, well, back in the day, it was an hour west of anywhere where you go sailing. But these days with the roads, it's a lot better. And not many sailors out there, but, you know, again, every weekend we're off somewhere doing a regatta. And from sailing, you know, just being tagged along, I got into sailing at Middle Harbour with Anthony Nossiter, as it turned out, when I was 6 years old in flying 11s. And he was quite a awakening in life, not just in sailing, but life in general. And, you know, back in those days, you know, Brad Kellett was one of the other young drivers of flying 11s down there. He coined me with my first nickname as Westy, and sort of stuck a bit since in some circles. But yeah, basically went through the ranks there, through a couple of different flying 11 skippers before moving into a Manly Junior of my own and steering that out of Middle Harbour as well. And from there, I basically grew too big for my age. And by the time I was 12, I was, you know, 60 odd kilos, which is what most people were sailing Manly Juniors combined at. And so Dad sort of pulled me out of having my own boat for a little bit. And I went and just crewed on people's tasers and floated around in different things until I got a bit bigger and got a laser. And that's where, I guess, you know, that was in the early 90s. And as I was getting through school, I did some work experience with Ian McDiarmid at McDiarmid Sails, and basically called me back a week later and offered me a job. So at the end of term 3 in year 9, I left school, went to America, did a Taser World Championships up at the Gorge with my dad, and came back and I started work in which I think was the 14th of October 96, and still sailing lasers. And I think it was really Ian who lit the competitive fire under me. Up until that point, I was sort of happy to go around, hack around the course, and enjoy the social side of it. And then, yeah, Ian started to push me along and started setting goals and questioning why I wasn't hitting my goals, and coming out with many of his classic one-liners like, you can have excuses or you can have results, but you can't have both. And kept pushing me along until we, you know, started to get some success through lasers. At the same time, you know, slowly building a career in the sail making world, and did that for quite some time until I sort of looked around and realised that, you know, you can keep going. And you know, I was lucky enough and worked hard enough to be in the top couple of laser sailors in the country. But realistically, you know, in the time that we had sailors like Michael Blackburn and Brendan Casey in the class, and coming up behind me, you had the likes of Benny Austin, Tom Slingsby and Ben Lamb. So, you know, realistically, I looked at it and thought, no, these guys are all, you know, very talented guys. And I basically started moving the classes which would further my sail making. We played in 18-foot skiffs, 505s, a lot of those classes. I think the 505s is, you know, where Nico cut his teeth, and it's still one of my favourite classes to date to go sailing. And I think they're fast, they're fun, they're technical, and just probably one of the best boats ever designed. So whenever I get a chance, I'd still try and step back into a dinghy. But I haven't really put foot back in a dinghy since I think about 2015 or 2016, which was the Taser World Championships over in Bustleton. I always did like the Taser class because you can have a boat, leave it in your garage for 12 months and it doesn't lose any value, it doesn't get outdated. Put it together and find a crew and campaign yourself for 3 months instead of sort of campaigning other people's boats, and go to some very nice places. But since then, it's you know, in 2013, I bought the business off Ian, having worked for him for 17 years. And Ian's still very much a part of the business. He loves it. It's his place. He built it, and I just custodian, if you like. And 2 years later, once, you know, supplies for good quality membranes for our racing customers sort of dried up as a you know, off the shelf or commercially available product, we looked at what options were available, and obviously the Doyle was the leading candidate, and we ended up buying the Sydney loft in 2015, and ran as Doyle Sails for 3 or 4 years, and you know, really just rolled into to Doyle Sails now.
So you're the owner of Doyle Sails Sydney?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, that's a terrific background and a good lead in for us. But before we get into the campaign management, I'll come to Chris Nicholson. Well, Nico, good to see you. A stellar record, no doubt. Multiple world championships in 505s and 49ers, dual Olympian, 6 times round the planet. It's pretty good CV.
Yeah, that's why the grey hair, Shippy. You know what it's about.
Yeah, indeed. But where did you know? Obviously, sailing's been part of your life forever. How did that begin, and who introduced you to it?
I was actually forced into it, to be honest. I'm not sure what age, but I'm thinking probably around 6 or so. But my brother Darren had he was joined the local scout group, and on one of the weekends they went down the southern end of Lake Macquarie, and sailing was one of the activities that they did down there in a Pelican. And then he quite enjoyed it, and then found out at the local club, the Belmont 16 footers, you could get a club boat. So he's kind of worked out, yeah, he'd get this club boat, and then of course, you know, no idea how to sail, no crew, and then you know, my parents politely told me that I was going to be the crew. So that was how the family started. There was no history, no parentage in sailing. The closest we got was my father. He used to work on the BHP ships. That was it. So that was kind of where it started. But it was, and then, you know, like terrific, you know, over the years with my brother, we sailed, you know, obviously we sailed a lot together on 505s, and you know, from a, you know, essentially kind of beginning together, and then winning our you know, our first world championships together was pretty special thing to do with your brother.
Yeah, well, that was in 1992, I think. Darren crewed for you, and you won.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And then and we, you know, we won three of them together, and you know, all the good fun things that you have in sailing that sailing offers you. You know, like that was my first trip to Europe was with my brother and another mate, sailing 505s just on the 3-month tour with the boat on the back, and sleeping in a tent or on empty yachts in marinas, and just on the sailing tour back then for 3 months as a young bloke racing 505s. Like, just a fantastic way to meet friends and see the world.
Living the dream.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's all the kind of stuff that I hope my kids get to go and do. The results don't matter. It's the fun and the people you meet along the way.
Well, you've had some great experience in the Volvo, but we'll come to that a bit later. Some good, some not quite so good. So we'll just leave that for the moment. But look, campaign management, back to you, Shane. Let's talk us through 2 scenarios, I guess. An owner comes to you and says, look, I've got a boat, it's not doing too well. I'd like you to ramp it up for me. And then we'll come to someone that might be getting a new boat, and he wants to do the same thing. So let's talk about a boat that has been around for a little bit and is perhaps not performing all that well. What's your take on that? How do you get involved with the owner, and how do you get him up to speed?
Well, usually our involvement in projects like that has come from recommendations from other people that we've either campaigned with before or worked for and done similar things in different projects. And that's a big part of what the sailing scene is. It's all sort of word of mouth and who's the right person for the job for different things like that. So, you know, when you get approached, it's sort of, you know, just to sort of sit down with them, go sailing with them, you know, start to work through the basics, like, you know, okay, what's the crew like? Where are they at with the level compared to the boat? Where's the boat strong? Where's the boat weak? And start looking at areas to, you know, improve the boat. And, you know, we always had a rule on back in the Midnight Rambler days where, you know, we would train the crew until the crew was as good as the boat. And then Ed and Mix and Bob and the guys would invest in the boat, improve the boat up another level. And then we would train and sail hard as a crew until we got as good as a boat. And then, again, look at modifications. I think the Far 40 was a great example where in 2009, I think we had the conditions and the best we managed, I think, in that boat was a 9th in that race. And I said to Ed, I said, mate, the crew's as good as the boat and we can't do any more. And he went one more year and agreed before he stepped up to the Curve 40 and, you know, started the process again, you know, working on the crew, getting the crew as good as a boat. Because, you know, no matter how much money you throw at a boat, it's only going to be as good as your crew at the end of the day. So, and, you know, there's two ways to look at that. You can throw a load of money at a crew, or you can build up a crew that, you know, you enjoy sailing with and want to put the effort into towards a common goal. So, you know, that's always the first stop for me is the crew training. You know, we go through things and we can build a new jib for a guy or put a new rudder in a boat, and it might get you, you know, 5-6 seconds an hour, 15 seconds an hour on your racing, depending on what you're replacing. But the biggest losses we always see are coming around the bottom mark. You know, you can lose 2 boat lengths at the bottom mark, you can lose 2 boat lengths at the top mark, and none of that's handicapped. You know, when it comes to your IRC or PHS handicap, none of that's taken into consideration. And I mean, going back to Tasers, doing a lot of coaching in that class after I sort of finished sailing, it was clear to see why Rob and Nicole Douglas were so good, and that, you know, they were winning everything, but every time they tacked, they were at least a boat length faster than the next boat. Every time they were around the top mark, again, they were at least a boat length quicker getting set up for the next leg. And it's something that's even harder to achieve in keelboats when you're managing crews of 5, 6, 10, or in Nico's case, 14, you know, 15 people. So, you know, that's always the first port of call for mine. And from there, we look at, you know, setting up training programs or getting coaches involved if that's a path that the owner takes. We find a lot of owners are happy to go down to golf pro shop and spend 2 hours with a golf pro working on their putting or working on their drives or whatever it might be. But when it comes to sailing, a lot of them are just actually, I've never thought of getting coaching in sailing. And you know, it's just the finesse that can come with tacking a boat nicely and hitting your exit angles and doing a nice bottom mark rounding while you're steering and the trimmers are trimming on at the same time. You know, that's where the big gains are always going to be made. I think once you've got a boat, the gains in modifying it from there are incremental. You know, yes, you can make some major changes, and Nico might have a bit more experience in that. But you know, once you've got the basic form of a hull and a keel and a rudder and a rig, you know, anything outside that is you know, not going to make those minutes around the course. They're just getting the crew work right, Ken.
And Chris, to you, if how brutal do you have to be with the crew? I suppose it depends on the campaign that the owner wants to run, isn't it? I mean, if he's there with a lot of his mates, it's a bit hard. He's sailed with them for 20 years to tell them he's got to get his mates off. But how do you shift through the crew selection?
Yeah, but what you touched on, Shippy, there, I think is the most important thing, is to sit down with the owner and find out what he wants to achieve out of it, and also what the crew want to get out of it. And then, you know, like, to be honest, like, there's my side of it, there's no really, you know, you can be quite honest and open with the crew, but it's kind of, you know, my side of it, the days of being harsh on crew are long, you know, like, we're never there in the first place, you know. But it's more about sitting down and discussing, you know, it's a process how to improve the team, but it is really about having realistic goals, and that can be crew work goals, that can be race results, that can be budget spent on the boat. Where does the owner want it to go? It's kind of, it really is it's a good discussion with the owner and the boat captain, and what they want to achieve. Pretty much most of it is achievable and doable, but it's a time and it's a money deal to make that happen.
And Shane, if you're putting a program together to, say, for the Rolex Sydney Hobart race, when, take COVID out of the equation, when would you start building up for that, and how would you go about getting a crew and boat into shape for the Boxing Day race?
Basically, since my first Hobart in 2004, I think everything I've done since that, every Hobart I've done all the work there goes into doing the next one a little bit better. But realistically, I don't think it ever stops. For us, the boat I manage at the moment, Zen, is a TP52. Come January at the start of the year, we're already thinking about Hobart at the end of it and what we need to improve on from last time, and starting to work through. But basically, by March, April, you want to have a pretty solid plan in terms of your sailing schedule, your regattas that you want to do, or series that you want to compete in, and of course the crew that you'd like to have on board. So I think it's a year-round thing to really, hit your straps for that race.
And how, as a sailmaker, do you spread yourself? I mean, obviously, people think the sailmaker should be on their boat, and everyone wants a sailmaker on board. How do you get around that?
Look, with a couple of boats I'm more involved in, I split the programs a bit. We try to do, say, the SOP series on one boat and OP series on another, and Blue Water on a third boat, and then you've got weekends in between for filling in on club races. But we've still got a team of guys here. We've got 5 people here on the floor that we like getting out on boats and getting out with our different customers. But personally, it's a difficult one. Everyone sort of wants you, but you can only, I think, put 100% into one boat. I actually sat out Hobart when I first took over the business, because I had, I took over the business in November, so it was a very busy period, but we had at that point 5 or 6 boats in the race. And I just felt it was best that I could focus on the boats without being involved in a campaign myself. And that worked out very well. These days, we're upwards of 22, 23 boats through this loft competing in a Hobart race. And, it's even harder. But, you make it happen. I keep saying to people, there's 24 hours in a day. You just make it work. And put your best foot forward all the time, and try and give people the time that's required of them.
Chris, if you had a campaign and you felt the boat was lacking, say the mast was poor, or need a new rudder or a new keel, I mean, how do you go about that, gently talking to the owner? I guess it depends on the budget to a certain extent, but if he wants to go full on to win a major race, how do you approach that?
Well, initially you've always kind of, if say it's IRC, there's a lot of good people around that great experience with working with the IRC rule, for instance, but also knowing by experience what going to a heavier bulb or a longer fin or a stiffer mast, or, and there's information out there where you can have a good estimate of what the speed, what the seconds per mile gain will be. And so you got to be just brutally honest with yourself and with the owner what that's going to be, and touching on what Shane said earlier, also looking at, okay, you might be coughing up a minute per race with bad crew work, and trying to justify, we're going to spend this much dollars for this many seconds per mile. That's a gain. And there's programs around that, are doing it to the nth degree, and huge budgets. But that's not, there's not many of them in that position, and really need to be spending the money, very carefully, and always with respect of that it's not your money, it's someone else's, and you need to look after that.
Yeah, sure. Well, Shane, we're putting a new boat together, and it's arrived for the Hobart race, say a 40-footer. Where do we go with sail inventory? What would your sail inventory be if he wants to do all the races and culminating in the Hobart race? Where do you start and where do you stop with that?
Well, I think where you start for anyone thinking about a new boat, or even purchasing a new to them boat for a Hobart race, you need to get your trades in a line very early. You need to get your sail makers working with your rig builders and designers, and rig builders working with your boat builders, and locking all of that stuff in early. And it's very hard for a sail maker or coming in once the rig's been designed and a deck layout's been done to suddenly say, well, that doesn't work, can we change this and change that? So it's probably number one to really get your trades locked in straight away. Even if it's a production boat, we're working with one at the moment, or we've got 3 new launches this year, production boats, and or a one-off. Zen was a classic example. That was basically, we bought a Formula 1 car and tried to take it rally car racing in the space of 6 weeks, and but we've got all the fundamentals right by having everything in a line before the boat hit here. We just about hit all of our target dates. We had a guy called Wade Morgan, Bubsy, who project managed everyone, and got the sail makers, the riggers, the boat builders all on the same page, and did a fantastic job. And we just really ran out of time to test the running rigging side of things there. But that's the first thing, is get your trades, and having trades that work very well together is also important too. You don't want a rigger and a sail maker butting heads all the time. That gets no one anywhere, and just adds to the frustration. But once you got that in the line, and you start looking at the sails, if it's Hobart in mind, then obviously you've got to look at the type of boat and what style of boat it is. Is it a planing boat, a displacement boat? Does it have overlapping head sails, non-overlapping head sails? Because that can have a roll-on effect with what you do with your wardrobe. For instance, a good customer who does a lot of offshore miles with his Beneteau 47-7, he keeps asking me about, do I need a code 0? Well, no, you don't. You can get away with that because you've got your big overlappers. And but then another customer is tossing up at the moment whether to race with Genoas or jibs on his J boat. And the trade-off is, okay, well, yeah, if you go with jibs, you need your code 0 to get you through that, crack sheets, off the wind type sailing. But it's just, again, a discussion, sitting down, working out with the owners. One thing, budgets, and second thing, expectations too. You can sell someone a whole swag of sails that they would never use, and I certainly don't take any joy in doing that with owners, because they work hard to be able to afford these boats. And I hate sails sitting in a garage for 2 years and having been used twice. It's really hard to justify it next time it comes around to buy a sail of some description. So taking it step by step, but bottom line is you need to tick the boxes. You obviously need a proper mainsail with 3 reefs in it. That's not a liability. There certainly seems the days of boats pulling out of Hobarts with destroyed mains have changed, which is a great change from 15, 20 or 30 years ago. It seemed to be a common occurrence. But I think the rule still, sits there that you wouldn't really go to Hobart with a mainsail that's done more than 3 Hobarts. And then outside that, you need to tick your heavy weather jibs, your storm jibs, and your heavy weather chutes that you need to have, because they're all the things that people don't use a lot, but when you need them, they've got to be in good shape. And then, your fundamental working jib, your full-size jib's got to be in good order. And I always look at it as 2 different lives to a sail. You've got its performance life and you've got its end life. And they're 2 very different things. People can look at a sail and think, yeah, it's still in good nick. There's no holes or anything in it. But, if it doesn't look like the wing off an aeroplane, your plane's going to crash. So you're not going to be getting your best out of it. and you're going to be doing all the other effort and work you're doing to your boat an injustice by, you know, potentially sailing with stuff that isn't as good as it could or should be. So, you know, new boat sales, there's a lot of guesswork in it. I mean, a lot of it now is calculated, you know, like we've got very good simulation software that can predict all the loads down to, you know, the clue ring loads that we've got to fit in the new jib of a boat we haven't even seen, how much the mast is going to deflect under different backstay loads and different forestay settings. And we can basically, you know, design a full, you know, boat and rig tune package in a computer now. So when a boat hits the water, you know, you're sort of halfway there, where in years gone by, you know, you'd probably have your sails back to the sailmaker 3 times doing luff curves on mains because there was no data from the rig builders on how much that mast is going to bend. The 3D CAD drawings that we can now incorporate in our design software, you know, helps us get clue heights on jibs right, so you can barber haul them properly without hitting cabin tops or anything like that. So, you know, the whole game is a lot faster than what it used to be. I think that process in working a boat up is a lot quicker. We know how much, you know, the rig's going to soften if we use 30 mil of forestay, or we know how much the mast is going to bend if we add, you know, 50 mil of backstay. So you can work up a full package pretty nicely without even seeing the boat these days.
You can computerize all that data and then produce a sail commensurate with all of that.
Yep. Yep. And obviously it's just like anything, you know, rubbish in equals rubbish out. So, you know, the guys in New Zealand have got some very talented engineers there, which have limited sailing capabilities, but they do all the data inputting, and then it goes to the sail designers to work out the mold shapes and geometries and that to you know, get them right, you know, out of a bag. It's a saying everyone's always used, but it was really correct. But certainly these days it's quite true. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Chris, you've been involved in a lot of maxi boats around the world, info tracker of late. What's a maxi campaign like to be involved with and to organise? It must be massive, is it?
Yeah, the organisation in the background is a lot, you know, and it needs to be very thorough and have every box ticked, because, you know, the old snowball effect, one little issue on the boat soon becomes a major and can be both a safety issue and financially pretty damaging to the owner. So there's that. So that's always going on in the background. But nowadays for us, like Shane said earlier, you know, the Hobart begins almost as soon as the previous one ends in terms of, you know, planning and preparation and mods to the boat. But our actual sailing side of it is quite reduced nowadays. It's really because, you know, the 100-footers are quite expensive to run, and we have a good you know, locked in crew, you know, year to year, and basically, you know, it's a 4 to 5 week training period of racing training, setting up for a Hobart. But it's all about logistics, being organised and being efficient, that, you know, the time you have on the water is used efficiently, because it's a high burn rate.
Yeah, sure. And Shane, if you were running well, you mentioned Zen, a TP52. Again, sorry to take COVID out of the equation, but how often would you be racing each weekend? Is that the good lead up for you?
Yeah, we race a fair bit on Zen. Like Gordon loves it. There's no one out there that loves his sailing more than Gordon. Without a doubt, you know, he's bought this boat as a retiree to have some fun. He figured he had 5 Hobarts left in him. We've lost one of them. God, I hope that we don't lose 2 of them. And but he also loves the regattas. So, you know, in terms of planning and setting standards, you know, we know at the start of the year that most likely Zen's going to do, you know, 4 or 5 regattas, including Early and Hamo, plus a load of 2 or 3 day regattas like Port Stephens or Sydney Harbour Regatta, Lincoln. And that's so we need, because it's basically nearly a full amateur program. Basically, you know, we've got 2 professionals generally involved, which is the tactician and myself. We often get a bowman in as well for a big event, maybe. It's all about crew training, and in managing the crew, I think we need a crew pool 3 times the size of what it takes to race the boat. So if we race the boat with 14 people, we're looking at basically a crew pool of 40 people that know the boat. And for instance, the winter series this year, we got 3/4 of the way through it, or 2 races left, but we used 36 crew in those 10 races, including the ladies' races. And all of that club racing stuff that we do is just building that crew pool up so that when someone can't make it to, one of the key guys can't make it to Hammer, we've already got the understudy in there to come and slot in that's done offside trim for 10 weeks or done the mast for, 4 or 5 weeks. And you just can't do it any other way. We're pretty lucky that we've got, 4 people that can cover that bow for us. And, one of them did the bow for us, I think the Winter Series 2 years ago. She didn't want to do the bow, but, now she's our primary pit person. But so many people struggle for bow people, but they don't put the time in to train people up. And I don't know, good is, I can't put them in. Well, put the effort in. You can't get angry at your crew if you don't train them to the standards you expect.
Sure.
So all of that stops racing and ops racing or Friday night twilights that we often do on that boat, it's all for the big picture stuff. Hamilton Island and Airlie Beach this year, I think my crew list was 24 people between the 2 events. So we had quite a big changeover between 2 regattas because, people just can't be expected to take 3 weeks off to go racing these days. The world's changed. It's not the husbands leaving the wife and kids at home anymore to do that. I think there's more demand in the corporate world. A lot of our crew are corporate type people as well. So the time's just not freely available.
So as in campaign management, would you set out a program, say, in February going through to December so everyone knows what races are coming up and that they can pick and choose and tell you as the boss what they can and can't do?
Yeah, look, myself and Gordon basically have that plan mapped out, but we sort of do it in blocks. We did a post-Christmas thing, and then come March, we start talking about the 12-race winter series, and then come, June, we start talking about summer. And because, we don't want people to feel as though they're obliged to do every race every time the boat leaves the dock. And but, and we don't want the same crew every week either, because it's not really feasible for a Corinthian crew to be able to do that. So, but yeah, we basically got it mapped out for a year in advance. And we were even talking about next year because this year's looking a bit dicey. I think last year we had about 8 different plans come into play and then get cancelled. And but we just kept planning and kept altering our plans as COVID permitted. I kept saying to Gordy, it's easier to cancel than put it on at the last minute. So we were sort of prepared for anything, boat and crew wise. We spaced out our anti-fouling. The vig came out and all the vigging got done. In between COVID periods there where we knew sailing wasn't going to happen. So when we did get the green light to go, we had a racing program in place, crew locked in for it, and a boat that was ready to go.
With a big pool like that of crew, when do you make the decision, or how do you tell them that they're going to Hobart or not going to Hobart?
I'm pretty upfront about it. I don't like leading people along thinking they're going to get a ride. And luckily enough, for 3 years in a row, we've had a pretty stable crew come back and do the full blue water season, including the Hobart. But again, you have someone that can't make a Cabbage Tree race, and suddenly we've got a trimmer that's done, the full winter series or done the SOP series that can slide in and do it. And then that gives them experience on the boat to come out and do a Hobart in maybe 12 months' time when we do lose a guy because he's had a kid or a new job or something like that. But no, I think you've got to be pretty upfront. I don't like the games that have often got played where people get tagged along and then last minute 5 people get flown in from New Zealand and they're carrying the bags to the boat on Boxing Day morning. And certainly the guys that, we do sort of have on standby, I'm actively finding spots for them with other members too. So if we don't end up having a spot for them, I can give them another option to get the Hobart. And that's, always been pretty successful for us.
Yeah. Well, Nico, I'll come back to you now. And you obviously had a stellar career in the skiffs and the 505s and the 49ers. And I mentioned your 2 Olympic Games, Sydney and then Athens after that. How did you go from skiffs into big boat or to yacht racing? How did that eventuate for you?
It was pretty abrupt actually, because you know, I was so busy focused on dinghies and Olympics, and then you know, needing kind of a break from that scene in between Olympics. You know, I had some friends suggest the Volvo at that time, and also you know, a couple of friends had said, you know, America's Cup wouldn't be for me, in regards to, you know, fairly back in those days, fairly repetitious. And so, you know, like I thought about the Volvo, and then I was contacted by Bauer Becking, actually, who was putting the program together for adults on Armour Sports. And yeah, just to come and do a trial and see how to go, because I think Daltz apparently had seen me sailing 49ers in Melbourne, which I didn't know about at the time. And you know, back in those days, kind of teams used to kind of roll the dice with 1 or 2 fully experimental crew that might work out, might not. So that was me, and it was a very much an experiment. And then, but you know, like I hadn't been offshore, like literally, and I'd never, well, before I said yes to join them, I'd never actually sailed a yacht with a steering wheel. So then I knew I needed to brush up, you know, and try and learn something in a hurry. And sorry,
a severe learning curve.
Oh yeah, well yeah, like it was silly kind of learning curve. You know, it doesn't happen nowadays. But luckily I knew Sean Langman very well, and he took me on a Sydney Southport, and you know, trying to drill in a lot of the basics and fundamentals into me from a very quickly. And then I went after that, not so long after that, went to Europe and joined the team, and you know, like it was ridiculously difficult, I got to say, for a long period of time. Like you know, to constantly be going to work or sailing on the boat each day, just knowing that you're just dragging your ass, hopeless type of deal. But you know, they persevered with me, and I persevered as well. And you know, but honestly, it wasn't until I reckon 3 months into the race, I reckon, that I thought I was pulling my weight. Like,
Right.
you know, it was just too much to learn, and no processes in place either to learn it. It was like, it was survival of the fittest back then. Like, you know, nowadays with young crew or lesser experienced crew, we kind of sit down and have a real plan of how to improve and what areas they need to work on, and just, you know, like, you know, really setting goals and working each way through them. But back then it was pretty tough, I got to say.
Yeah, pretty brutal. But well, anyway, you must have done all right, because you've done 6 races or another 5 races since around the planet. So you seem to like it now.
Yeah, and it's funny how I said, you know, when I thought I just started to justify me being on the boat, like pulling my own weight, it was also at the same time when I also started to enjoy it. Like, you know, I wasn't enjoying it early on. I was really seasick, you know, in the early days, and you know, and still get seasick even now. But you know, learning to manage it better. But you kind of it's a whole so much involved with, if you're enjoying it, you're so much better at that role. And you know, I quickly found out, you know, with the ocean racing, and I think also, you know, the logistics and the management of bigger projects like that, I really enjoyed. And I never, when I first started doing ocean racing, I didn't think anything would kind of supersede, or take over the passion that I had for the Olympics and dinghies, and the ocean racing and bigger programs was I knew very early on that was something I wanted to do.
Yeah. And Shane, if around the world races, I mean, talk us through the sail inventory on something like that. I mean, they've got to go a long way round and they've got to do the distance. How much different are those sails to, say, a regular boat going to Hobart?
Oh, compared to a boat going to Hobart, I mean, I guess again, it depends on your conversations with the owners. Like some of our owners, or very few of our owners, say, I want a main, so it's going to go one Hobart, make it as light as you can. I want to win the race, and it's only got to do one leg down there, and that's that. And then you've got other guys that want a main, so it's going to last, 5 or 6 years. So, around the world stuff, I actually don't have a lot of experience with that in recent days. When I first started, we did, I think, 2 of the what was known as the BOC boats, which was a massive eye-opener for me, especially in a small loft that we have here, building the big spinnakers, and everything was all built in-house. I think Alan Neighbour, Spirit of Newcastle, was one. And then he sold his boat to an American guy, and we did a set of sails for the American guy for the next race. Geez, I still don't think I've had anything through the loft as heavy as them. Recently we had a mainsail off one of I think Nico's client's boat, the Ningaloo, in the place, and that was 600 odd kilos, that mainsail, and the sails back then in the early 90s off the 60 footers were just as heavy to get around the world. So, I think most of the Volvo stuff these days is all of it, I think. I don't know what the makers are doing, if they've got an open option for sales, but the Volvo 65s are all supplied by the organisers. So they all had the same stuff. They were all built heavy, and with one aim, which was to get around the world without failing.
Yeah.
So, it didn't matter if they were 10 kilos heavier, because the next bloke's sail was 10 kilos heavier. But for us on a TP52 or a very competitive sort of 40-foot area as well, giving away 15 kilos on a mainsail is, I think, a very big handicap to do, to have to deal with for 600 miles. So, but for some people, it might suit them to say, yep, I'll get another race out of that. And for other people, they might want that full competitive edge. So it's just about, getting the expectations from your owner, so you don't let them down at the end of it.
Yeah. Well, Nico, I want to take you to your second Volvo on Movie Star with Bow Becking, and Andrew Cape was the navigator. It didn't end too well for you. Tell us about that experience, if you don't mind.
Yeah, well, that was, I guess, accumulation of a lot of breakages along the way. That was, our boat was the first ever Volvo 70 built, and we, straight from the very first night out with the boat, you knew that these things were a real beast to handle. And you see now that basically pretty much boats that go that kind of speeds nowadays are twin rudder boats, and a lot more control. Back then, we're doing those speeds, and we were a single rudder. And I remember the first night, we went down away doing 38 knots, single rudder, just going, boy, we've got a long way to go. And we had, significant breakages, and to be honest, we didn't manage the project very well, in terms of having breakages, and then breaking that area again, and not foreseeing future parts of the boat that may break. So we learned a lot as we went along, but finally, we almost sunk the boat going into Cape Horn. Had a pretty complex keel system with the canting keel. We had these kind of sliding doors that used to kind of spin with the keel as it went, and coming in the Horn, we tore one off, and flooded the boat, and almost, very, very close to losing the boat 500 miles out from the Horn. So, none of this stuff is taken lightly, I got to say. And then we finally we did lose the boat up in the North Sea. Went off a big wave, landed flat, and the keel pin, the aft keel pin,
leg, wasn't it?
Sorry?
The transatlantic leg.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
Yep, and landed really badly, and then the keel pin broke out the bottom of the boat on the aft bulkhead. It's kind of like the one part of the boat that, when you see all the carbon and all the strapping, that you just think that can't break, but it did. And it had possibly been damaged earlier on in the race. And so, like, that damaged, and we tried, we had the pumps running and trying to stabilize the keel, and we had a massive load coming in, and in the end we had ABN2 come and pick us up, and they'd had a horrible experience beforehand where they'd lost Hans Horowitz over the side, and he was deceased and on board the boat. So we needed those guys to come and rescue us. So it was a horrendous sort of three day story, to be honest. And we had one opportunity, pretty much. Just it was, the seaway was pretty bad when we did get in the rafts from the boat. So it was all relatively controlled. So that's a blessing. And then we had, it was calm, and then obviously over the next 6-12 hours was to blow up to 30-40 knots, and it would have been extremely risky to have tried to stay on the boat when you had a guaranteed safe passage.
Yeah.
And the boat sunk, and it was, unfortunately, it was pretty much always going to sink at that stage, without anyone there to man the pumps, keep clearing the pumps. So yeah, it was a big moment.
Yeah. And you've just done the ocean race, haven't you, up in Europe?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, that was, I guess we've mentioned logistics and COVID a fair bit earlier tonight, and that was really the kind of main achievement there, where we started racing in Lorient and raced down to Cascais, and then Cascais to Alicante, and then Alicante to Genoa. So we've done the full sort of 4,000 miles through Europe, and through 3-4 countries. So we had a lot of we had several hurdles to jump through COVID wise, but I'm really glad that we brought this subject up, because there's a lot of sporting groups out there now doing a lot of work, doing a lot of preparation, and they're able to run their events, and that's what I really hope that we do this year in Hobart. We have a solid COVID plan, and it can be done, and I know that the work's being done on it now, and I'm quite looking forward to giving ourselves the very, very best chance of having a good race to Hobart.
Yeah. Well, we all hope that. Shane, what's for you for Hobart? What's coming up? Zen, will that be your boat to Hobart?
Yeah, I think so at this stage. Obviously, last year we were all set to go. We didn't know whether we were going with Gordon or not, but he was adamant that the boat was going to go with or without him. As it turned out, he found out that they don't do chemo on Saturdays or Sundays, so with the race starting on or public holidays, and so he figured he'd be able to get the race in and not miss any chemo. But yeah, that's the plan at the moment. The plan is just basically we're lining up every time an update comes out from the CYC. We're sort of onto the crew saying, well, this is the Blue Water Series at the moment. This is what we're doing, and we're just, I guess in a little bit of a holding pattern, but still being as proactive as we can. Just last week I sent out an email to the crew, just reminding them that if we are going to get to go ocean racing at any point, it's pretty clear that we're going to have to be vaccinated to do that. And if any crew had problems with being vaccinated or anything like that, to let me know. And if you haven't done anything about getting vaccinated, then pull your finger out and make it happen. You know, I think we're doing our best. You know, the boats, you know, the work is always going on it. You know, just little improvements all the time. Waterproofing mainly for us, and you know, we've got some new sails sitting on the rack here that were there for Southport, but obviously didn't need to get used, and early in Hamo and that. So we're sort of basically ready just to turn the key and go. We've got the crew fundamentally there. Our bow person, bow woman, bow girl was coming from New Zealand. So we don't know how that's going to play out this year, but you know, we'll work it out as we go and just make it happen. I was talking to one of the directors last night. If we've got limitations on people, I sort of suggested that if we got to go with 10, we go with 10, and we just make it work. And just means you're going to have to prepare a little bit better for changes. And I mean, Nico races Volvo 70s and 65s around the world with 11 people on board or something. So, yeah, I'm sure we can get a TP down the Hobart with minimal numbers. I just think we've got to eliminate as many excuses as we can to you know, to not race.
I'm sure, like all of us, or many of us, we viewed the Fastnet race with great interest. What did you make of those Amoccas and that Scorpius, the 125? Pretty impressive.
Yeah, they're at an extreme end, and having just done the Europe race, I got to see the Moccas firsthand, and you know, when they hit their angle that they're really good at, they're impressive. You can't even get near them. But you can see though that they're in a, you know, I think that they look like they're still in a transition phase between a conventional planing hull and a fully foiling vessel, and they're kind of still in the middle. So they've still got some big weak points, you know, I think. But Scorpius, 125 footer of just open it up and
let
see
it go.
how we go. But you know, like it takes, you know, these kind of boats, they take good crew. They need good crew at the top of their game. You know, even just honestly, just getting them off the dock. You know, like they just can't be. You know, they're very, very expensive bits of kit, and they need good people around them the whole time.
Well, talk us through the next Volvo, which is now called the Ocean Race. A couple of classes here. What's your take on that?
Yeah, so you know, so a combination of the Amocca 60 and the Volvo 65. So, you know, I think while the race is, you know, I think clearly in a transition phase to go to more higher performance boats, and to do the combination of both boats, I think was a smart move, and especially also in not now, but also for the really the past, I think probably 8 years since the GFC, that things have changed dramatically in regards to funding these big projects, and everything's had to be done for cheaper and for less, and at a higher efficiency. So and when you kind of bring in all those parameters, it kind of you keep leading the way back to one design controlled cost racing. And the last ocean race, or the last Volvo, you know, like we raced around Volvo 65s, and you know, they're not the fastest boat in the world, but boy, did they give amazing racing, close racing. Some of the finishes we had were, you know, anything up to 5 boats on the last day could come in through to the finish and win. So I think there's a nice combination with the Volvo 65 and the Amocca class. One is going to be the future for you know, offshore racing, and the other gives great commercial value, you know, and super close tight racing at a very efficient price.
And the Aboccas, we traditionally see them with one person on them, but they're going to be fully crewed for the ocean race. Is that right?
Yeah, they'll have a crew of 4 or 5. So one thing we certainly learnt racing against them in Europe was that just how well designed they are for Vendée and single-handed. Like, you know, they're a fantastic boat for that, and they're presenting some real difficulties when you go to stick 4 to 5 people on them. Plus, also, then you have to do a race course that we do in the ocean race where there's, you know, up to 9 stopovers. So, you know, you're doing a lot more upwind, you're close to shore, there's more debris in the water. So they've really got some challenges ahead. And then to do that with 4 to 5 people fully enclosed on some of the boats is a pretty it's a pretty harsh existence for people on those boats.
And when's the start? Is it 2022?
Yeah, sort of late next year.
Yeah. And what about Chris Nicholson? Will we see him on board?
Trying to, absolutely trying very, very hard to. It's the sort of thing that's you know, like the racing for me in the last ocean race was just fantastic, and then got to have a little reminder of it when we did the Europe tour a few months ago, and but we've been working hard since the end of the last race to try and have a team.
What,
there
your own project, your own boat, your own project? Is that what you're aiming for?
We're trying that way, yes.
Yep. Right. And how many boats are they looking at this stage?
There's currently 8 Volvo 65s in the world. We had 7 racing around Europe. So, you know, and you know, believe it or not, I think we're fairly COVID friendly sport sailing. You know, like we have a pretty controllable arena in which we work. So I think you know, like, it lends itself pretty well to that.
Yeah.
Not huge crowds, very controllable, and absolutely, you know, we want to do one more lap. Who knows, maybe 2.
And for Hobart, you're booked in for Info Track. Is that the plan?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a few new front sails on that, which will be you know, believe it or not, a big improvement on a maxi, on a 100-foot maxi that's already, you know, we were in good form last year before the Hobart, and you know, like, there hasn't been massive changes to the boat over the years. Black Joe Akish and Tony Mutter running the boat have just, you know, like, a great crew and a perfect setup. And you know, and our owner Christian Beck, he loves it, and you know, plenty of pressure to lead out of the heads.
Sure.
So, you know,
the last couple of times anyway.
Yeah, and we've got a really cool bunch of people on board the boat that race well, but also appreciate it for what it is. In regards to, it's a pretty special day when you get to sail on one of these 100-footers and what they're capable of, and we're getting to sail on a, you know, fantastic boat racing in the best harbour in the world, to racing down the Hobart, and everyone appreciates it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Shane, look, thank you very much for your input. It's been terrific. I mean, I think, as Mitch said at the beginning, this will go back up on the CYC website in the next couple of days. And if anyone wants to get in touch with Doyle Sails, I think they'll find you easily, or they'll see you around the club. So best of luck with Zen and all your other projects. Hope, like everyone, we're looking forward to getting out on the water, aren't we?
Yeah, bloody hell, I can't wait. It's got my actually pushed my boy out in his oppie on, you know, Nico's talking about sailing with kids and that. I had the joy of pushing my my son out in his first oppie on Sunday afternoon, just off Putney, within the 5K from home, and
Great.
It was pretty light, but he had a ball, and we followed him around in the vid for a while until my little daughter decided that she was going to have a go as well. So the 6-year-old was in, and off they went. So they're getting to go sailing.
Wonderful.
And soon enough, it's going to have to be Dad's turn, I think. And I know the crew from our little group chats and that we have. We had almost a virtual Hamilton Island commentary on our WhatsApp chat last week, because we're all supposed to be up there, and everyone's chomping at the bit to go sailing. So I don't think anyone's going to be short of crew come December 26th.
Yeah, terrific. All right. Well, thank you, Shane, very much. Hope to see you around the club. And Nico, wonderful to see you, and hope to see you at Christmas time. And if anyone's watching that wants to kick in for Nico to go around the world, I could thoroughly recommend him. There you go, Nico.
Thanks, Shippy. Nice one, mate.
Righto.
Get your wallet out too, Shippy.
Yeah, righto. Good on you. Okay, thanks, guys. It's been really great. And as I say, we hope to see everyone out on the water soon. Everyone stay well, those that are watching tonight, and let's hope we can get a very good Hobart race underway. So that's it for us. Thank you very much, and hopefully see you next week. Good night, all.